Thank you for joining us. I don't think I've had the pleasure of meeting all of you. My name is Maria Manis-Paincho, and I am the Interim Executive Director for New Hampshire Civics. So welcome to the New Hampshire Civics Kickoff Professional Development Session for the 2023-2024 academic year, Teaching Global Civics. Our presenter tonight is Casey Finch, the Deputy Director of Teaching and Learning at the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR Education Division. Casey is a former high school social studies teacher and has a great passion for civics and the connection between global and local environments. So I'm going to turn it over to Casey now, and we'll get started. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you. Special thanks to New Hampshire Civics for providing me the time. I'm very excited to have you all in this initial bringing global civics to the classroom. This is going to be the first in a series with New Hampshire Civics and CFR Education. Future ones will focus on kind of frameworks and some curriculum that you can bring directly to the classroom. Today, we're primarily going to look at the tools that we have, which would be World 101, Model Diplomacy, and Convene the Council. So I'll share those as we go and provide some time to give an overview and answer any questions that we might have. As a brief introduction, again, I was a classroom teacher for 15 years, primarily taught U.S. history with some foreign policy electives. And for the past year, I've been at the council, helping draft some educational resources for teachers and students and some professional developments as well. So hope to kind of share some of that expertise from the classroom with you all. For those of you who are not familiar with CFR, we're a 100-year-old foreign policy think tank. We're independent, non-governmental, and nonpartisan. We were kind of founded in the wake of World War I with the intent of having an independent group that kind of drove knowledge and awareness of how things work around the world to inform citizens, to inform policymakers, and just to be more educated about the complexities of global civics. Many of you are likely familiar with the, I'm going to share my screen for just a second. I know when I was in the classroom, I was familiar with CFR.org as well as Foreign Affairs Magazine. Those are the two that I use. So this is where we're drawing our expertise from, but our websites live a little bit separately for now. So obviously we got a link to CFR Education, but we do have some great backgrounders, and we do have obviously Foreign Affairs Magazine as well. So this is kind of my introduction to CFR, but CFR Education has some products that you can bring directly to your students. I'm going to screen share again with a quick video that speaks a little bit more towards our mission and our organization. So I will share my screen now. Here we go. Got it done? Take one, Mark. Cell 6.
Alright, buddy, so we're just going to have a quick conversation, like I said, and we're just going to roll on where I am. So we're going to talk about sort of your thoughts on the world and your hopes for the future. What does foreign policy mean?
Today's students live in a world more connected than at any point in history, where challenges like fast-spreading viruses and carbon emissions, and opportunities like scientific breakthroughs and markets know no borders.
We are all working against, climate change.
This is a pandemic that's happening, and we're gonna get through it.
Technology has really developed and advanced, but there's also some cons that come with that.
Preparing for the inevitable challenges and opportunities ahead requires that they develop the essential knowledge, skills, and perspective to understand how their connected world works, how all the puzzle pieces fit together. Since 2015, CFR Education has devoted itself to this vital work, developing award-winning products that explain the fundamentals of foreign policy and international relations using accessible language and multimedia formats. Our innovative learning products are designed to help students in middle school all the way through graduate school make sense of the world around them.
It's super important for young people to learn about the rest of the world because we're growing older with the world.
In school, we're raising the next generation of leaders. It's important for them to be aware of the pros and cons to each decision.
This begins with Convene the Council, our foreign policy video game appropriate for students as young as 12. Developed in partnership with Civics, one of the nation's leading providers of educational games, Convene the Council introduces students to foreign policy decision-making, reminding them that different policy tools are suitable for different situations, and that sometimes there's no right answer. All the while, students see how foreign and domestic policy are intertwined, that issues faced and decisions made in one corner of the world can affect us all. CFR Education's second product, World 101, is a primer course for high school and college students with little or no background knowledge of international relations and foreign policy. With rich multimedia stories and instructor-designed teaching resources, lessons on the growing World 101 platform are nonpartisan and developed by experts. Broken into 5 distinct units that cover global era issues, regions of the world, how the world works, and sometimes doesn't, modern historical context, and foreign policy, World 101 lessons can be used individually or strung together to form unique courses of study. CFR's third product, the Model Diplomacy Simulation Program, invites high school, college, and graduate students to step into the shoes of decision makers to debate the world's most pressing issues. With more than 40 full-length case studies, an ever-expanding library of short-form cases on current and historical events, and exclusive video content featuring commentary from foreign policy experts, Model Diplomacy teaches about the issues and processes involved in addressing national and global challenges.
You can't just be knowing about your own life or your own country and what you're going through in your small community.
It's very important for young people to learn about the world because, at least in the US, it's a very diverse place. To be able to work together and coexist, you need to have some understanding of their values and culture.
In an era where misinformation has taken a toll on democracies everywhere, Convene the Council, World 101, and Model Diplomacy offer students and lifelong learners alike a toolbox packed with the knowledge, skills, and perspective they'll need to thrive in a world transforming and growing more connected every day.
We need to be able to learn what's going on to make informed choices about what we're going to do while we're here.
All right, so that's kind of our overview, our products. I'll delve into them a little bit more and kind of provide the way I view the use of those products in the classroom to bring some context. Everything that we do, we're kind of rallying around this concept of building global civics in classrooms, right? We know that civic education in our country has been underfunded a little bit as of recently. So the goal here is that as we build back up in New Hampshire and elsewhere, that we find ways to inform students about what's going on around them locally, the state level, the national level, and at the international level. And likewise, empower them to make change at all those levels, especially with the U.S. Taking on a role as a global leader. So we're really hoping that global civics becomes a part of a well-rounded civic education in New Hampshire and throughout the country and throughout the world. The next piece I wanted to do is to give a chance to kind of introduce you all to each other and kind of prime the pump with a couple of questions as well. So we're going to wind up splitting into breakout groups for a few minutes. Then we'll come back and share out before I continue on. So in the breakout rooms, show my screen again. In the breakout rooms, and we'll share these questions again. If you just want to introduce yourself, what school you're at, your location, and what courses that you teach. And the 2 questions that we'll have you discuss is how do you embed current events in your curriculum, and how do you embed foreign policy in your curriculum as well. So those would be the 2 questions that we'll go off of. So we're going to send you to breakout rooms for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll bring it back together to kind of share out. All right, great. Well, welcome back, and hopefully get a chance to introduce yourselves and to kind of share some of the courses you taught. But part of the reason I asked those discussion questions for you about embedding current events and embedding foreign policy is those are some of the biggest challenges that we probably face in the classroom. Students want to hear that relevance, and current events and foreign policy can both be kind of inroads to whatever courses you're teaching. I saw several of you were teaching American government, U.S. history, law, social studies, So those are all ways to kind of get inroads to what students are seeing in the world around them. So do we have a couple of you that want to share out maybe how you embed current events or foreign policy in your classrooms?
I'll bite. So again, I teach, Alex Luchav, I teach at Hillsborough Deering High School. And I teach a range of different subjects, but I think where I embed foreign policy the most, we divide our US history courses into 3 pieces of the chronology. And I teach primarily the modern chunk, and I teach that backwards. And I start with whatever current administration we're working with. So currently, obviously, Biden. And we talk about all of the foreign policy tools a president has. And then we go right into Ukraine currently and analyze all of the options on the table, the choices that were made, shouldn't have been made, should have been made. And then we work our way back through that chronology. And it's kind of nice because we end up with World War II and we have another bookend of a case study where we're able to use those same tools that we used at the beginning to then look at the decisions that Roosevelt made and Truman made in World War II. So.
Great. I love it. Working backwards from present day, it must be a great way to hook your students in. Any other things that came up in discussion or things that you do in your classroom to embed current events or foreign policy?
I can go. I'm Mary Nolan, and I have a 5 through 12 social studies certification, but I actually teach adult English language learners at Second Star in Concord. And so they're at the beginner level. And what I do to teach current event is I use a lot of children's literature because the pictures are wonderful and the language is really simple for them to understand. And I was telling my group that I think that our students actually bring the foreign policy to the classroom because they are coming from so many different countries. And just because they have some limited English proficiencies doesn't mean that they don't have complex thoughts or ideas about America's relationship in the world or their country's standing in the world. So I don't say I explicitly teach it, but I think that they bring it with them through their lived experience to the classroom.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mary. Well, fantastic. And I guess part of the hope here is sharing these tools. And again, they're all free and available online for you to share with your students. Is just that it's stuff that impacts them directly, whether they be students that are immigrating to the U.S. or your students just watching the news through social media or whatever it may be. So our hope is that these free tools are going to be useful for you in your classrooms in various forms. So I'm going to jump back to go and get a quick overview of each tool that we have. At the end of each tool, we'll provide a chance for you to write questions in the chat if there's anything I can clarify, but we're hoping that the tools are, once you are aware of them, you'll find them easy to use and easy for your students to use as well. So I'm going to share my screen again. And again, feel free to use the chat with any questions that might come up. As I mentioned, we do have 3 tools, 3 products rather. The first one is World 101. And the way that I would describe this is essentially an online foreign policy textbook. As you can see, we break it down into these 5 units: global era issues, region of the world, understanding the international system, contemporary history, and foreign policy. So these 3 units have several modules underneath. They're organized by category. For instance, if I click on global era issues, you can see we've got globalization, terrorism, nuclear proliferation, with the idea that the lessons that are embedded under each one will kind of give students a complete understanding of what the topic is, what is globalization, with some case studies about how medicine's produced, how global semiconductors might be impacted, etc. So we try to provide real connections to modern day that could impact the students. And again, these are a combination of readings, of short form videos about 5 to 7 minutes, some interactives, and things like that. The unit that I wanted to share here is that this concept of bringing current events and relevance to the classroom. Globalization comes up all the time, whether it be the social media that students are using, like TikTok, a Chinese company that kind of took the world by storm, whether it be the iPhone they use, whether it be the food they eat, so many things that impact students' lives. So you can make some great connections. One of our most popular modules is globalization. So I'm going to kind of put the lens of relevance and current events through how we have kind of created our globalization unit. So if I go back to our globalization page, like I mentioned, we typically start off with a short form video, usually 5 to 7 minutes. We then kind of break out from there. So I'm going to play just a small clip of the globalization video. I'm not playing the whole thing, but it's going to be, I find them to be pretty effective and efficient in terms of using titles and categories to really set things up and help kind of frame the rest of the unit. So I am going to play about 30 seconds of this globalization video.
Every day, we knowingly or unknowingly experience globalization, the worldwide movement of people, ideas, money, goods, data, drugs, weapons, computer and biological viruses, greenhouse gases, and more. This isn't new. People and goods have always moved around the world. The Silk Road, a network of trade routes stretching from the Mediterranean Sea to East Asia, facilitated the spread of fabrics, spices, art, weapons, technology, ideas, and disease over thousands of years. What is new, however, is the scale, velocity, and range of these flows across borders. Think about the speed at which an infectious disease like Ebola or COVID-19 can spread around the world, or the reach of a financial contagion like the crisis of 2008. Look at your smartphone and think about the global coordination it took to produce.
And again, that was kind of just a taste of the video, but these kick off our units typically almost across the board. We always have at least one short form video and others that are sprinkled throughout. We do have a YouTube page that has all these videos essentially bundled together if you're looking to just incorporate a couple of videos. Likewise, it does coincide great with our readings, but I'm sure, like you all, I kind of like to mix and match things in my classes, so I would probably be doing a blend of what appears here. As you can see now that we're on the landing page in World 101, you have essentially the learning resources or like the chapters that go down the side. So you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to bring to your class. If you're looking at the semiconductors or how China influences Hollywood movies today, we've got a whole bunch of case studies, a whole bunch of learning resources that can help. Showing this page, on every learning resource, we do have lesson plans for high school, targeted for high school, and we have higher ed discussion guides. So every single page, you'll see these two links down below. We have curated them, and typically they're designed to be done in 1 to 2 class periods based on how we curated for that particular unit. So again, we've got a whole series of lesson plans that hopefully they're Google Docs forms, so you can edit them, you can tweak them as needed. And as I mentioned, they will appear at the bottom of each page. Sorry. We use a lot of infographics, so we've got videos that help explain. We do have the readings that are typically in the ballpark of 4 to 6 pages if you were to print them out. And we do have infographics to break things down. We're trying to hit students with a variety of different learning styles. We do have a lot of videos. So again, when we want to get more topical or more case study specific in globalization, we do have one about how globalization brought avocados to the US, and that became a big thing with how easy it is to access. I did pull a video as well from trade about the sneaker supply chain. So while it's not a globalization linked video, a lot of our stuff does kind of cross-pollinate. And it can be pretty engaging to give those real palpable examples for students. And with this one, again, I'm going to play about 30 seconds of this sneaker video, which students tend to like.
By the time you see them in stores, most products have traveled around the globe. Very few products come from just one place anymore. Even when a label says made in China or made in America, it's not quite that simple. These days, the majority of manufactured imports are bits and pieces of final products, a steel frame for a bicycle, salt for packaged meats, a car engine. And the story behind most of the finished products we buy in stores is a globe-trotting journey. Along this ride, the item is designed, its material.
And again, just to kind of show you that, you know, we know a lot of teachers are going to use this as a supplement to their class. They're going to pull things from various units. And that's one example that if I was teaching globalization, I would definitely pull the trade video from the how sneakers produce.
Look around an American kitchen and you may see
By the time you
it.
see them in stores, most
There we go. Coming back to this slide right here, as a reminder, again, we kind of view World 101 as being like almost an open textbook that students can just access. It's meant to be mobile friendly. If they're using their phones, it can be pulled up from any device. But for teachers, not to bury any of those important teaching resources, every single page will have those lessons at the bottom, which I'll show you in a minute. The complete series on the side of my screen right here shows you all the different lesson plans that we've drafted out. So again, trying to make it easy, trying to help support educators in the classroom with ideas for how to utilize these resources. So for each one of these modules, we typically break it down into manageable chunks. So for climate, we've got a lot. So there's 4, obviously. Other ones we might break in half to 2 or 3, but the idea there is that you're gonna have a 1 to 2 day lesson for each plan that we kind of create. All right. And sorry. I'm going to go back to just to kind of show the globalization lesson plan. Any lesson plan you click on, we have the links to the resources that we're recommending. So in this case, 4 learning resources from World 101. We do have a guided reading handout, which is essentially questions for students to answer if you were going to sign up for homework or you were going to scaffold. We have the presentation is all the visuals that I showed you and the videos. So those are going to be in a slide deck for you to edit or just use in one easy format. Discussion guide with some essay questions, some discussion questions, and then a vocab list to help with scaffolding as well. So everything should be built into a lesson plan. Again, they're for 45 minutes. I know you all teach different lengths. You have different numbers of students in your classroom. So it's available on Google Docs to edit and to use as you see fit. So what I will do, if it hasn't been done yet, is I will share the link to all the lesson plans in the chat right now. Are there any questions or things I can clarify about World 101 before we move on to the next product? Yeah, and again, free, there's no login. It does function very much like an online textbook, so you can easily share links with students to specific readings, and hope the lesson plans are all very manageable and very helpful for all you in the classroom. Okay. Well, if there's no questions, we'll share all the links with you later. We do link to, I see a question about standards. We lean into the C3 standards and we also lean into the EAD standards. So that's what we're flagging right now. If you're worried about state standards or you're looking to get those taken care of, separate from the lesson plans, and I'll share my screen again. Separate from the lesson plans, sorry, I'm juggling windows here. If you come to the homepage of World 101, we're going to have several other areas to go, but the instructor resources, they actually have a standard search. So you can search standards by state. So in the case of New Hampshire, we do have an integrated, EdGate does kind of a curating of what we have. You can do New Hampshire standard search right there. You can do C3, EAD. There is some basic LMS integration if you're looking for that for the classroom, and a few other things too. So we're in the process of reorganizing things slightly, but the standard search will always be there, as will the LMS integration. Any other questions you can put them in the chat or just ask? All right, I'm going to move on to, again, that was essentially our online textbook, World 101. I will shift over to our next product.
Look around an American kitchen.
So the next thing that we all really focus on in the classroom is building those academic skills. So content is great. We care about it, but we also want students to have those skills. So model diplomacy is a complete series of mini simulations, pop-up cases, we call them. They're short form and full cases related to foreign policy debates, hypothetical and historical, that it can occur at the National Security Council level or at the UN Security Council. So for today's focus, we think it's the best inroads to kind of talk about the pop-up cases, because those can be handled in a number of ways and they're a little bit more accessible than the full cases, which can take a while. They're shorter, they're one-page cases. The screenshot on the right of the screen is a PDF. It's also what appears on our website. So we give everything you need in one single side page. So it's something that students can read to prep, but it gives them kind of debates that occur at the National Security Council level, where they can obviously focus on reading, on their writing skills if they want to do an opinion based on these options, critical thinking, speaking and listening if you choose to debate in the classroom. So for this case, talking again about relevance with a link to globalization, we have a new case that came out this summer related to whether or not the United States should ban TikTok to preserve national security. So something that was in the news, a lot of Congress was talking about it, individual states were trying to ban it. So it's something that kids have that current events connection to. So we felt that building a case study around that would be a good place to drive engagement. So what we do with these cases is we give a basic overview of what the issue at hand is. And again, this one's ripped directly from the headlines. We give some historical context in terms of why it's a concern for national security, why people are debating it. And then we give what the decision is that is being presented to the National Security Council. At the end, we give 3 or more options that we generally recommend that educators focus on just those options, but they can also allow students to bring in new ideas. So in this case, the 3 options that students will discuss and debate would be pressure ByteDance to sell TikTok to an owner outside of China, threaten TikTok with a US ban, or prioritize business and internet freedom by working only on a multilateral approach to bolstering cybersecurity. Those would be the 3 that students would be able to debate in class. Depending on how much time you have, you could utilize additional resources, but again, it's something that can be done in some cases as they read the 1-pager for homework, they do a 4 corners or a 3 corners activity the next day, or they read it for homework, do a quick response to it, or it's done completely in class. The idea is that these pop-up cases are meant to be, a lot of teachers are using them in a window of about 25 minutes to 45 minutes. So it can be a whole class, or it can be done a little bit more concisely. So, and again, a lot of things pulled directly from the headlines. If you look at all the cases we have, our newest ones are at the top. So we had one that was historical in nature, talking about that red line in Syria. We have one about the recent prisoner swap from last summer. Some about UN Security Council reforms. So there's a whole bunch on here, but as you look, as it pertains to kind of having a bigger series, we do have one that talks about tools of foreign policy and one series that talks about US history. So if you want to bring it to a US history classroom, I'll start there. We have everything that goes back to World War I, the explosion of the Maine for the Spanish-American War, the lead up to the War of 1812 with the embargo acts. So we do have some history stuff. We also have, for those who want to teach tools of foreign policy, we've got pop-up cases built around those scenarios as well. So there's quite a bit on here, more than I can obviously discuss in a short period of time, but it's worth thumbing through and seeing what these cases are, because again, they're meant to be relatively quick hit and you could utilize them in a variety of different ways. to bring them to your classroom or to supplement what you're already doing in that classroom. So I will stop sharing. Any questions related to those mini simulations? Oh, U.S. history pop-up cases. I'll share the link right now. So this link that I'm sharing in the chat, that's to model diplomacy. At the top, you're going to see case library and then pop-up cases. The U.S. history series is under pop-up cases. So just there's the case library is the full cases, but look under pop-up cases. Any other questions about model diplomacy? The only thing I will mention is currently the case library, which is the large cases that can take multiple class periods. There's currently a login required, but it's a free login. It just gives you more features. Our intention is most likely to get rid of the login just so you can access it without having to put in your email or whatnot. But the pop-up cases, entirely free to access, no login required. PDFs exist for those as well. So hopefully you can find those debates and discussions worthwhile.
There's also a question, Casey, the difference between NSC and UNSC cases in that case library.
Yes. So in the case library, those are the full-size cases. We have two different formats, and really it's just the roles that we choose to embed. So with the full cases, you're going to assign a role. If it's the National Security Council, it could be the Secretary of Defense. If it's the UN Security Council, it's going to be a different role. So we have everything laid out there, but the case library is just a lot more to delve into. It just gives two different options for how those the roles get assigned, and a lot more explanation, which I'm happy to follow up with later, but just gives you two different perspectives, I guess, that international perspective or that the U.S. National Security Council perspective, which will be different. Great. I'm going to slide over to our last product, and then I can open it up or be available for other questions. So let me share. Our final product is Convene the Council. And Convene the Council, it's kind of a way to drive engagement and independence by gamification. We allow students to work their way through foreign policy issues. So Convene the Council takes place in the National Security Council. There's a whole bunch of advisors that are advising the students, or you can partner up students as the president looking to make a decision about foreign policy. The game actually goes into quite a bit of detail with the recommendations. It tells you the pros and cons of each choice, and then students can kind of work their way through, and every foreign policy decision it falls somewhere on the scale of being a positive or a negative impact. So I'll play the trailer. It's about 1.5 minutes. I'll play the trailer and then I can show you the website, but that's also free as well.
There's a new team in the White House. We can't wait to see how the new administration navigates challenges on the world stage.
You will have some tough choices to make, but the people in this room will give you the information you need. A conflict in Pineland has escalated, resulting in hundreds of thousands of people fleeing to other countries to escape the violence.
We should not ignore this crisis. We have the ability to help people in
We already admit a certain number of refugees each year, but in times of need, the administration can raise that
We'd
number.
likely face some domestic criticism if we're seen as spending so much money on others, when unemployment, poverty, and inequality are so high here at home.
People might even criticize us for trying to pay other countries to keep people out of our
Doing
own.
nothing is also an option here. A lot of refugees may want to stay close and not travel to the U.S.
Thanks to the administration's hard work, thousands of refugees have been allowed to enter the country. Safe from violence, they're able to seek new opportunities in the U.S.
And again, that's our trailer for the game, but it's free. It's available online in partnership with iCivics. It can be played in about 30 minutes, so a little bit less than a class period. And there are multiple possible outcomes, so you can actually have students keep going through to get different outcomes or to try different things. Some students want to get the best score they can get with the most positive outcomes. Other students have actually learned quite a bit by trying to make the worst possible policy decisions, just to see how things map out based on national security, economic conditions, things like that. So this is a way to pretty efficiently bring a quick foreign policy lesson to your class. It can be done standalone, or it can be done to supplement the other products that we have. So that's our third and final product. Convene the Council does live on iCivics webpage. Students can choose to log in, but again, they can kind of play through the game. It's also available, as you saw, on app stores and whatnot. But again, in partnership with us, iCivics hosts the entire game, and students can pretty quickly get into their scenarios as they go through. So it's great that they can kind of build out their case study like that, and it does give them all the various policy outcomes. So we also have on iCivics, we also have some pre-gaming. So if students have not gone through a more elaborate lesson plan, there's vocab terms, there's some worksheets that prep them for the game, if you wanted to make this a little bit longer and give them a little more context. And there's also some post-gaming activities that have them reflect on that activity that they did in the game simulation. So hopefully a variety of options and tools that can be useful in the classroom. And at this point, the goal is to open for questions and just to share out contacts. So any questions about Convene the Council? All right, so again, we've got, I'll share one more screen with you. Again, our goal is to kind of support, we are going to have different types of PDs throughout the year. Our 3 websites are over here. Those will be shared with you later. We do have a newsletter, and the newsletter, our big focus is teaching current events. So we'll, as news breaks, about once a week, we'll send out a current events related newsletter that kind of gives some tools and some recommendations for teaching about that current events, whether it be the war in Ukraine or something else. We do have our support emails for World 101 and Model Diplomacy. My contacts there as well, cfinch@cfr.org. We have a Facebook group that also keeps you tuned into what's going on, as well as CFR Education. What they did most recently with the UN General Assembly was they kind of curated learning resources that coincided with speeches that were being given at the General Assembly. So again, our goal is to be as accessible as possible. Our goal is to provide professional development for teachers, to provide lesson plans for teachers. And with New Hampshire Civics, we hope to have 2 to 3 more professional developments throughout this year that focus on frameworks. So today was just about the products, showing you the websites, making you aware of them. Next one's going to be about, we've got this framework we developed that uses the tools of foreign policy to teach current events. So we've got worksheets, we've got suggested calendars. We also have one for U.S. history, a PD around U.S. history and foreign policy coming up as well. So those would be more curriculum specific, but really at this point, I'm happy to field any questions you might have, any points of clarification. But again, we wanted to build this relationship and hopefully provide you with some good free resources for your classroom.
We have a question, Casey. Alex said, I saw that you have an election of 2020 series. Will you be preparing a series of lessons for the 2024 election?
To be determined. The key goal with those pop-up cases is to address current events as they break. So it wouldn't be unexpected if we did, but there's nothing that's in the works just yet on that. But we do try to make them topical, whether it be election 2020, the pandemic, the TikTok case that we did this summer. So we try to connect them with current events. So it's a strong possibility, but not being drafted just yet, obviously.
And Alex, I just would share with you that New Hampshire Civics is doing a PD, a two-part series, the end of October and the beginning of November, on teaching the election with Citizens Count, and it's going to be more New Hampshire based. So be on the lookout for that, because that might also give you some other resources if you're looking for something along those lines. Okay. Other questions? I have a question, Casey, and it may sound kind of foolish. You have these three wonderful products. If you could only do one, which one would you start with if you want to start to integrate these in your curriculum over the next few years?
I guess for me, if I was back in the classroom right now, I'd probably go to World 101 first, just because it can be broken up so many ways. The readings are fairly short, so I can share links with students. The videos are manageable to share. That's probably where I would start. And again, I was in the classroom for 15 years. Prior to coming to CFR Education, I used the backgrounders on CFR.org. I would actually edit down articles from Foreign Affairs magazine. So I wasn't aware that World 101, all the policy and community council existed. So I would have heavily leaned into World 101, because I do think it's so easy to manipulate for class.
Great. That's good. Other questions? Everybody's good? Great. Well, I want to thank you, Casey, for this intro and this overview. Wait a minute. I think we just got a question. Excuse me a second. I agree. I would be using the globalization resources in my economics class next semester. So
Great.
That's great, Lou. Good to know.
Maria, if I could hop in, it's Claudette real quick. I'm going to just drop into the chat my barking dog a brief survey about our session tonight. So it'll be really helpful for us going forward to plan sort of the time of afternoon or evening. So there's a question that pertains to that. If you guys would just grab it from the chat, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudette.
Yeah, and thank you all so much. I hope some of these tools are helpful. We fully expect that they can be supplemented into your various courses. We don't expect that you're going to use everything we produce, but hopefully, whether it be globalization or something to do with economics or you name it, you find some home for some of these resources in your class, because we do feel that building out civics also entails that global civics piece. So thank you all for what you do in the classroom, and really appreciate your time tonight.
Great. Thank you. And we appreciate you being here. This is for, like I said, the overview, and we're really looking forward to the subsequent PDs that Casey's going to be giving us. So get more into the content and the details of integrating it into the classroom. So thank you all, and have a great evening.